Everything kicks off when portals to the demon dimension blow wide open, letting out wave after wave of freaky monsters that go full rampage on humans who have been living life on easy mode for way too long. But this isn't some run-of-the-mill disaster tale. These invaders, demons. And certain humans randomly unlock powers, turning into elite fighters called hunters. After a brutal, drawn-out war with the underworld freaks, hunters somehow manage to push back the chaos, giving people another shot at living. Over time, shattered cities get pieced back together, and people go back to semi-normal lives. But demon outbreaks are exactly going away, mostly cause awakened hunters are super rare, and demons just keep popping up like Twitch simps donating to e-girls non-stop. So what do the big brains do? Cook up something out of a sci-fi nightmare, lab-grown hybrids known as chimera hunters. They mash up humans, usually prisoners, with monster DNA or that weird glowing crystal stuff found in demon territory, racing against extinction. The scientists finally crack the formula to mass-produce chimera hunters. And just like that, hunters stop throwing themselves into danger every day while these artificial warriors step in as humanity's frontline defense. It works so well that over the years, some scientists start running underground labs doing all sorts of sketchy Frankenstein-level experiments. Inside one of those sketch dens, two researchers clock out by checking on the last chimera for the day, number 17. Four Eyes barks at Zuck to back off if he doesn't want to end up headless. But Zuck brushes it off, saying number 17's brain is toast. He's a walking corpse unless someone programs him. Lying in a dark tank looking like something out of a horror movie, the dude's right arm is wrecked, likely from one of the many failed experiments. Zuck, feeling bad for the poor guy, decides to report him. Cause yeah, it's pretty clear they'll scrap him soon anyway. Cut to the director's office where the report comes in. Number 17's basically falling apart and nobody knows how he's still breathing. Any other chimera would have been 6 feet under already. The director asks how long he's got left, and the chubby nerd guesses maybe a month. With zero emotion, the director orders them to toss him onto the battlefield as cannon fodder for the next gate blockade mission. Oh, and don't bother giving him a recall command. Jump to the demon realm. A prehistoric-looking bird swoops toward Kaon, but before it even gets close, he slices it clean in the air like tissue paper. Next comes a weird knockoff plant monster crawling from the ground. Kaon kicks it sky high and absolutely goes off on it. Then, mouth wide open, he charges up a lightning blast and nukes everything in sight. Watching this go down, the hunters tracking him are just speechless. This chimera's output is easily S-rank, maybe higher. One of them glances at the portal, still wide open, but the team's chill. They're confident no baddies are slipping through while Kaon's on duty. They just clean up whatever stragglers make it past him. Once the last mini-bosses are dealt with, the gate suddenly starts folding in on itself. The squad takes off immediately as they run. One hunter asks why they're ditching the chimera, and another answers they were told to leave him. Watching Kaon get wrecked by a giant crab demon, one of the girls actually feels bad. Dude just saved the whole squad, but the guy beside her shrugs, saying chimeras are nothing more than lab-made tools built to follow orders. That's it. Even while getting torn apart like he's on clearance, Kaon keeps swinging, fighting like his life depends on it. The command in his head repeats, do not return, doesn't matter if the job's done. Doesn't matter if he's dying, standing knee-deep in acid, what's left of his consciousness screams that he should go back. But his programming won't let him. That day, nearly 2,000 demons get wiped off the map. Not a single hunter dies, all thanks to him. And just as the light fades from his eyes, when all that's left is his head, the memories start coming back. Turns out he wasn't always a monster. He was once a kid. A regular human boy snatched away when he was just 9 years old. Memories flood in like a busted tape reel, his earliest being the orphanage where he was born. 9 years later, he's a wild kid chucking rocks at anyone who calls him ugly, just like any chaotic 9-year-old would. That ends with the orphanage director kicking him out into the freezing night, not giving a single damn whether he lives or dies. Some scientists stumble upon his unconscious body in the snow. One of them, only mildly grossed out by the slums, jokes that kids are easier to find than Easter eggs out here. They do what mad scientists do best, drag him back to their lab for some illegal, inhumane testing. First thing they do, slap a curse on him so he can never escape again. Then they tag him, number 17. When he wakes up, the first thing he sees is a bunch of creeps filming while they inject S-tier monster goo into his veins. He tries to move, but they've got him locked down like a dangerous animal. Days pass. Shockingly, no side effects. Brain's fine, thinking sharp, powers fully under control. Even though he looks like a ticking time bomb ready to snap, all those maniacs can think about is how useful he is. So they keep dumping more monster cells into him. Fast forward 6 years. Kaon's now a full-powered chimera hunter, wiping demons with one attack. One energy beam later, a bunch of wasp demons are BBQ'd and the road is scorched for miles. A mom thanks him for saving her and her kid, and an injured hunter says sorry for making a child do the heavy lifting. But Kaon just says he's fine, even though inside he's totally numb. Years pass, then one day the mental lock suddenly breaks. He finally realizes, what the hell has he been doing this whole time? That tiny flicker of awareness tips off the scientists that the side effects are finally kicking in. They keep pumping him with monster DNA, over 500 kinds, until he doesn't even resemble a human anymore. 20 years go by. Now he's a hulking beast that looks like a nightmare fusion of a dragon and a dog. No soul left. Just a walking horror show that make people want to bleach their eyeballs after one look. After that, his death spiral finally hits the brakes, and all that's left of him is just one lone bone. But out of nowhere, that bone starts floating and rebuilding him piece by piece until Chimera number 17 is back in action. Only this time, dude looks like a model straight out of a fantasy gym calendar, complete with abs sharp enough to cut glass. Still stunned by his wild comeback, he starts wondering if he's really human again. Then figures, nah, those beast cells are still in his system, so he's definitely still part monster. Especially since he's out here casually flexing claws like he's promoting a predator-themed clothing line. Nobody's shown up to drag him back to the lab either, so Kaon assumes they bilate on him like a toxic ex. He notices the lab number that used to be branded on his arm is now totally gone, which makes him think maybe, just maybe, he's finally cut ties with the people who turned him into a weapon. And since he's rocking a smoking hot body and isn't dead, he starts to think he might be some kind of immortal type creature. You know, the ones that get a few respawns unless their core gets nuked. But there's still one thing bugging him. The scientists always swore human DNA couldn't mesh with immortal monster cells. Yet here he is, full power, full control, full glam. Maybe whatever glitches he had in his system got wiped out, since he remembers how his head used to feel cloudy and locked down by some kind of psychic leash. But now, he feels totally unchained. So he figures maybe it's time to actually live like a real person, since the title number 17 was just some label slapped on him like a product code anyway. He tries to recall his real name, but instead he gets hit with a memory of an old scientist who called him a reckless nutcase, but still begged him to help people. That guy had asked him to save 1,000 lives, but back then, Kaon was deep in his edgy brooding phase and didn't even respond. Snapping back to reality, he calls that whole request garbage and laughs off the idea that some rando orphan from the slums is supposed to be humanity's savior. As he stares at the fiery sunset, abs glowing like they have their own spotlight, he briefly thinks about revenge, but lets it go. You can't chase payback when there's no one left to blame. And besides, it's been so long that the anger feels more like a memory than a mission. There's no way back to the human world right now anyway, so he figures he'll run into them eventually. Till then, revenge can chill. Looking at his new and improved form, with the universe kindly censoring the private bits, he makes a choice. He's gonna try living like an actual human being to make up for the time they stole. As he walks off, he realizes he probably needs clothes. Mid-stroll, it hits him. He can't even remember the last time he wore anything. He tries thinking about what material could work but draws a blank. So like any uncivilized fashion rookie, he starts scanning the area for materials. That's when he spots a dead bird-like monster. Looks like it got caught up in a territory fight, but there aren't any wounds. Poison maybe. That actually works for him since the corpse is still pristine and perfect for skinning. He morphs his arm into a massive blade like it's second nature and remembers from the lab that you always start from the belly when skinning. He gets to slicing, and right as he opens it up, some weird purple gas leaks out. He clocks it as poison immediately but breathes it in anyway like it's a cologne sample. The only downside, the stench, it's horrendous. Guess he'll have to wash the hide. Eventually, he finishes skinning the oversized bird and thinks it's not a bad first attempt. Then he heads over to a river to rinse it off, but when he pulls the hide out, it's stiff as a board, even though it felt soft earlier. Must be something about the creature itself. Then boom, genius moment. He lays the hide flat and starts beating the life out of it like he's collecting a debt. Mid-smack, he wonders if this is actually how tanning works or if he's just wrecking it for no reason. Luckily, after a good beating, the hide turns soft again. Feeling proud, he hides behind the bird's corpse for a bit of modesty and starts tailoring it to fit. But just then, a flicker of flame lights up on the bird's head. Its eyes snap open, definitely not dead. It looks straight at Kaon, clearly not okay with someone peeling its skin off like a banana. Kaon doesn't panic. Instead, he punches holes in the hide, throws it on like a boss, and wraps a vine around his waist. New fit complete. There's still some leftover venom on the inside, but he figures it's too much of a hassle to clean. At that moment, the bird monster lets out a banshee-level screech, totally catching Kaon off guard. It thrashes around like it gets what he's saying. He guesses it's probably another immortal type since it wasn't even breathing earlier. If this was the old Kaon, he would have fried the bird on the spot. But now, seeing it barely able to move, he shrugs it off and says the creature got lucky. Then wishes it a better second life and turns to leave. As he walks away, he tosses out one last line, maybe fate's got jokes and they'll meet again someday. Sometime later, he stumbles into a cave, peeking around like he's house hunting. Boom, a massive centipede drops in front of him. But Kaon barely reacts. It lunges, but he's more interested in checking if the lighting's good. One swing later, the bug's head's on the floor and Kaon marks the cave as a hard no. Next up, snowy mountains. The Yeti lies frozen, scared stiff, probably saw Kaon coming like a jump scare. Our guy already squared up with the Yetis, but passed on this spot too since food supply would be a nightmare. He moves onto a forest, but it reeks so badly it's like someone nuked tuna in a break room microwave. Yeah, that one's a no-go. He keeps it moving. From a sketchy lizard den to a suspiciously cozy volcano, but nothing feels right. Finally, he reaches a cliff and takes in the insane view. He's actually shocked the demon realm has a place this beautiful. He decides to check it out more and jumps clean off the ledge, landing like it's nothing. Water's crystal clear, there's fish jumping around, it's practically paradise. He wonders if he can grill up a few of those fish like he's camping. Everything about the place clicks: fresh air, flowers everywhere, endless fish buffet. He picks this spot as his home base and dubs it the Kaon Du-woon house. Meanwhile, somewhere far away in the demon realm, the sky rips open and a portal explodes to life. Something rockets out of it and crashes into the ground with a boom loud enough to shake mountains. A chrome-skinned figure rises through the smoky haze, scanning the area and casually wondering aloud if this really is the demon realm. He soaks in the surroundings for a second, the fresh breeze, the bursts of color from the flowers, and decides this place is actually the perfect spot for building Kaon Du-woon's home base. To get started, he whips out some vine-like appendages from his fingertips and effortlessly clears the forest, slicing through trees with one smooth motion like he's trimming weeds. Then he gathers all the fallen logs using the same vines and stacks them up to use as building blocks. Everything seems to be going fine until he realizes the ground is a bit too uneven for his liking. So out come the vines again to flatten the terrain, pulling up roots and grinding down stumps until the spot is finally clean enough to host a luxury treehouse. He sets down the foundation and posts, and something about the way his body just moves without thinking starts to trip him up a little. He wonders, is this what people mean by free will? Especially since this is the first time he's ever made something that's actually his. Next, he lays out the floor planks and decides to swap out nails for some snail-type monster mucus. It hardens like stone and might even act as waterproof glue. Sounds like a win to him. Once the main frame is done, he gives the roof a stylish finish using threads spun from silkworm cocoons. That makes him feel a little more secure about monsters not randomly smashing through the place. It's looking pretty homey, but he takes a second to think, what else do real human homes have? He remembers the lab used to show videos of normal human houses from before the gates opened. Most of them had pets or gardens. Since dogs are clearly off the table out here, he decides to start a garden. After brainstorming ideas, it hits him mandragoras, they're perfect. Especially since there's a snowy mountain nearby, which is their ideal habitat. He starts hiking into the snowy terrain, remembering that mandragoras tend to grow in areas with high mana like the Manorch peaks. The way the snow piles up around him brings back memories of when he got snatched and sent to the lab. Weirdly enough, he kind of sees that as a good thing now. Being turned into a chimera meant no more freezing or starving in the gutter. Eventually, he feels the mana levels spike, which tells him he's close. And boom, there they are, mandragora roots. They look like weird leafy sunfish and are super touchy, freaking out and dying from even tiny changes in their environment. He figures it's safer to take younger ones since they might be easier to move. So he carefully picks 3. But instead of the ear-shattering shrieks mandras are famous for, the first one is passed out cold, snoring like a kitten. The next 2 are sleep-talking. That throws him for a loop until he remembers that the whole mandra scream thing was more of a lab myth. In low-mana environments, humans stressed them out so badly that they just snapped. But here, in the demon realm, they're completely chill. Still, he wonders why they're not resisting or running away. Unless they recognize him, he does have mandra DNA in his system. So maybe they think he's one of them. He tucks them gently into his waistband, relieved that they're calm. Then he starts thinking maybe he can ask them later for a little root juice to make tea or even grab a snack off their fruit. But he quickly remembers that their fruit turns toxic if picked the wrong way. So he makes a mental note, ask nicely when the time's right. Suddenly he senses movement, some humans nearby. He starts wondering who'd willingly climb a death trap mountain unless it was really urgent. But hey, he could use some gate stones, so he decides to check them out. Nearby, one of the hunters is griping that their own teammates used them as bait and bailaid. The other one yells at him to get it together because a horde of mutant rabbits is charging straight at them. The snow rabbits lunge with their gnarly mouths full of squirming tentacles and fangs, but the hunter manages to throw up a shield just in time. Problem is, the barrier's not gonna last long. He instantly regrets all his life choices and starts screaming for help, right as the shield collapses. Our guy drops in from the sky like a superhero, landing with a shockwave that freezes everyone in place. The rabbits, they panic and scatter like someone set off a fire alarm. The 2 hunters are frozen, jaws on the floor, watching a half-naked man just casually scare off a whole monster mob. They scramble to thank him, introduce themselves as Zhangju and Kim Taehyun, and ask for his name. He tells them, but it's clear neither has ever heard anything like it before. Kim Tae-hun starts wondering if he might be a reclusive hunter, judging by the wild caveman look. Kaeon flips it and asks them why they're hiking around in a monster hotspot when they don't even look higher than D rank. They explain they're chasing a bounty for capturing a chimera alive. That immediately catches Kaeon's interest. One of them explains the chimera escaped from a lab and jumped through a gate mid-chase. That actually calms him down because it confirms they're not tracking him. He then asks where all their gear is. Kind of weird they're out here completely empty-handed. They tell him their teammates ditched them and took everything. Turns out it was a setup from the start. They're now poisoned by mana overload and won't last much longer. One of them begs for help, saying he's got a pregnant wife back home. They explain that humans can't survive long in the demon realm without returning and purifying themselves, or else the mana eats them alive. Desperate, they look to him and ask if he has any way out. Kaeon just listens silently, his eyes locking onto their gate like he's already making plans. But before they even get the words out, Kaeon suddenly freezes like he just picked up on some universal warning signal, then launches into the sky like a rocket, leaving them speechless mid-sentence with wind blasting in their faces. Elsewhere, Kim Nari, now in her chimera form, is standing right at the edge of a cliff. That same group of hunters who Bylade earlier tries to sneak up on her, but she slowly turns around and gives them a look that screams, "You're done." Right then, Kaeon shows up on scene, eyes widening slightly as he wonders if he came too late. All he sees is blood and scattered gear, and this faint blue energy sphere blinking out by the cliff makes him think the hunters dipped and left their stuff behind. And from the way the tracks shift from kid-size to beast paws, he's guessing the subject shape-shifted mid-battle. He remembers what that bounty guy said earlier about it being a lab-made creature that Bylade through a portal. The thing's built from fluid alloy so it can morph on command. But because the materials were so rare, they made it pint-sized, basically a kid in monster form. Kaeon peers down the cliff and almost bursts out laughing. Somehow this tiny metal goblin just soloed 5 B-rank hunters. Meanwhile, back with the bruised duo, Kim Tae-hun is frantically trying to shake Zangju awake. But Zangju coughs out that his body's wrecked from mana poisoning and that it's over for him. Kim refuses to hear that and brings up his family. Zangju, barely hanging on, tells him to say goodbye for him, but Kim just yells at him to shut up and hold on, saying there's always hope. Just then, someone steps into view and Kim goes on alert, but it's just Kaeon casually walking over with all their missing supplies. The second Kim sees him, he sprints over, drops to his knees, and basically starts praising Kaeon like he's their last hope. Kaeon's a bit puzzled at first until he remembers he mentioned not having a gate stone. That's when Kim whips out 2 checks worth 10 million yen each and begs him for a gate stone. He's desperate. If they don't escape now, they're both toast. Kaeon stares at the checks, doing some quick math in his head. Sure, that money means nothing here, but back in the human world, that's a jackpot. So being the generous chaos gremlin he is, he whips out a gate stone. Kim drops into a textbook perfect 90-degree bow, pouring out thanks like a broken faucet. Swearing he'll never forget it, then he bolts back to Zangju, shouting that they're finally getting out. Kaeon watches them leave, wondering where he should stash the checks. On the way, he casually asks what the current market rate is for a gate stone. Turns out 1 million yen. He scratches his head, says he probably overcharged, and claps a hand on Zangju's shoulder, then says he'll give him some change. Kim's confused for a second until he realizes Kaeon's pouring mana straight into Zangju's system. He immediately freaks out. Transferring mana like that is seriously risky. If something goes wrong, both could drop dead. He braces for the worst, but suddenly Zangju jolts back to life like someone flipped a switch. The corrupt mana inside him gone. He grabs Kim in a tight emotional hug while Kim just stands there. Shell-shocked, Kaeon just turns and walks away. Zangju shouts that he owes him big time. Kim's still trying to figure out who or what Kaeon actually is. Back at home base, Kaeon takes a second outside, sensing for threats nothing. The Mandrioras are slowly waking up. But they look wilted and depressed, which immediately sets off alarms, so he gets to work planting them. Once they're in the dirt, he's still not sure if they'll bounce back. They look just as sad. He stares at their lifeless leaves and thinks maybe it's because they were ripped from their native habitat, or maybe they're just starving. To test the hunger theory, he injects a bit of his mana into the soil. Instantly, the plants perk up like someone just gave them caffeine. And Kaeon can't help but grin. While he's chatting with his new leafy squad, he feels something behind him. He figures it's Kim Nari, the mechanical chimera from before. Kinda weird that it followed him here, but whatever. Ignoring it for now, he hides the cash and starts rummaging through the loot. Turns out it's a pretty decent haul: clothes, blankets, cooking gear, and then he spots it. Instant ramen. Last time he had that stuff was way back at the orphanage, and just seeing it hits him with a wave of nostalgia. Feeling hyped, he decides to make it right away. He follows the instructions as best he can and heads to the lake for water, but quickly realizes he has no clue how much he's supposed to use. Before he can figure it out, those nasty lakefish leap out like they want a bite of him. Remembering how people just toss whatever into ramen for extra taste, he flicks one of the fish straight into dreamland. Next, he searches around for stuff to add, maybe eggs or green onions. He finds these odd capsule-shaped eggs and grabs a few. Since there's no real green onion, he settles for tree leaves. Close enough, right? He dumps everything into a pot and calls it good. That's when Kim Nari walks up, holding her stomach like she's starving and staring straight at the pot. Kaeon lights the fire and realizes the recipe doesn't say when to add the fish, so he just tosses it all in to boil. As the smell fills the air, the mandrayoras start retching while Kaeon quietly questions if ramen was always this nasty. The scent hits Kim Nari, who starts swaying like she's drunk on hunger. She floats closer and suddenly shapeshifts into a puppy. She remembers from the lab that humans love dogs, so she tries to milk it, whimpering and limping toward Kaeon. But Kaeon just watches, totally unamused. He sees right through it. Injury obviously fake. He figures the thing's just trying to get on his good side. Still, he's impressed. For something that young, it managed to survive the lab and make it all the way here. He plays along and asks if she wants to try the ramen. Kim Nari immediately starts drooling. In front of them is basically a pot of danger stew, but both decide to go for it anyway. The second they take a bite, the dog freezes, struggling to make sense of what it just tasted. But Kaeon, he gets hit with a full-on nostalgia bomb of hot pot back at the orphanage and smiles, saying it tastes exactly like back then. Our hero says it tastes amazing, mostly because the flashback hit so hard it blocked out how terrible the flavor actually was. Meanwhile, the mandrayoras are basically one sniff away from collapsing from the smell. Once they wrap up the meal, Kaeon tells the pup to clean up and bounce. As the mechanical dog limps away, Kaeon casually mentions it was limping on the other leg earlier. The robot quickly swaps its limp back to the right foot while Kaeon barely holds in a laugh. After wrapping up dish duty, he moves on to the laundry, smacking pollen-covered clothes with a stick like he's in a historical drama. He's not a fan of pollen, but he also knows he can't keep rocking caveman leather forever. He tries to go easy to avoid damage, but one swing obliterates the rock and the outfit with it. After a beat of awkward silence, he sighs and picks up the last outfit left. That's when he spots the robot creature still hanging around, keeping its distance. Earlier, it tried blending in as a rock. Before that, it pretended to be a fish while he washed dishes, and earlier it disguised itself as a tree near the garden. He realizes it's been trailing him non-stop, switching forms but never getting too close. It keeps up the sneaky routine until a bee lands on its nose, and it panics, shouting that it hates bees. Based on how it's acting, he figures it's probably under 5 years old. The way it talks, stiff and robotic, feels like a chimera kid with fake memories jammed into its brain. Deciding not to comment, he clears his throat to make his presence known and randomly says something about the nice-looking forsythia flowers. Then he finishes up the laundry and mutters about how much harder it was than expected. Too bad none of the clothes actually fit him. Still, he hangs them up on a silk thread and checks on the mandrayoras. The robot seizes the moment, snatches the shirt he just washed, throws it on, and proudly declares it hers. She then morphs into a tiny human girl. Meanwhile, he finds the baby mandrayoras still struggling in the dirt. Their leaves are limp and their roots look super dry, even though he already cleared the weeds. Curious, he digs around and sees the soil's packed with bugs and junk, which is probably choking the roots. That's when it hits him. He skipped the basic step of tilling the ground. That one mistake might have put the mandra kids at risk. Determined to fix it, he starts prepping a new garden the size of his whole house. Right then, the mechanical girl walks over and greets him. He's surprised she finally spoke. She asks if the house is his, and he says yeah. She instantly assumes he's a local of the demon realm. He decides to mess with her a bit and asks what tribe she's from. She freezes for a second, then tries to bluff, claiming she comes from somewhere way past the waterfall, so far off he'd never find it. He jokes if she's from the coconut tribe. She nods without hesitation, like that's a totally normal answer. When he asks about the shirt, she casually says in her tribe, finders are keepers, that's just how they roll. Amused, he lets her have it and asks why she's even here. She replies she got kicked out of her tribe and shyly asks if she can stay, says she likes it here because there are no bugs and there's an actual house. She's nervously fiddling with her hands, looking like she's doing puppy eye practice. Realizing she just wants a safe place to rest, he agrees. But only if she helps out with chores. Her whole face lights up and she immediately asks what he needs done. He tells her they're gonna prep a veggie garden so the mandrayoras can finally settle in properly. Without blinking, she grabs the stick, strikes a confident pose, and says she's strong enough. Then she starts tearing up the ground like it's made of pudding. Watching her casually wreck the soil, he thinks she's either terrible at acting normal or has zero idea what regular kids are like. He finally tells her his name and asks what hers is. She pauses. Clearly thrown off, she doesn't have one. But then, inspired by the flowers she saw earlier, she proudly announces her name is Kim Nari. He knows she just swiped that from Forsythia, but she sticks to it like it's gospel. Soon, they've got the patch ready. And Kaeon even puts together a clean little rock fence around it. The mandrayora roots look so happy, it makes him wish he'd done this way earlier. Then suddenly, Kim goes quiet. He notices the mood shift and asks why she's crying. She wipes her face and says the plants remind her of her friends. That hits him and he starts to wonder if actual friendship could have even existed inside the lab. Before he can ask, a loud, high-pitched screech rings through the woods. He tells her it's probably just monsters going after each other. Classic demon realm ambience. But Kim curls up and says she saw a baby chick earlier before she found him, and now she's scared it might be in danger. Kaeon nods. She adds that it already looked injured. He bluntly tells her it's probably done for, watching her shake. He figures she wants to help but can't bring herself to do it. She quietly mutters that she can't save monsters, and he realizes the brainwashing from the lab still has her mentally locked up. So instead of giving her orders, he offers a suggestion. That maybe the chick could survive if she goes back for it. That's all it takes. She bolts. Meanwhile, in the forest, creepy wasp-like monsters with freaky double jaws are already surrounding the chick. One lunges in for the kill. But Kim charges in like a sugar-crazed missile and knocks its head clean off, shouting that she's gonna save the chick no matter what. During the battle, memories from the lab flood back. The other Chimera kids hated her for always taking first place in combat trials. That meant they had to face the worst experiments with the highest fail rates. They stole her stuffed animal, pushed her around, and told her she should have just let them win. Said things would have been better if she didn't exist. They kept kicking her while she lay there confused, not understanding why she was the villain for doing what she was told. Now, as she faces the wasps, she screams at them to knock it off, says it's not right to gang up on someone weaker. Then she throws a punch and sends the last wasp flying into orbit. Back at home, Kaeon is quietly feeding mana into the mandrayora roots like some Loki plant dad. When Kim comes running back, she's clutching the chick like it's about to fall apart, yelling for help. She's clearly freaking out, thinking it's not breathing, and Kaeon tells her to chill and slow down. The second he gets a better look, something about the featherball starts ringing a bell. Kim's still panicking, worried it's going to die in her arms. Kaeon stays calm, leans in, and pushes a little mana into it, then relaxes when he sees the wound isn't anything serious. Each monster's magic has its own unique vibe. And even if this one's color changed and it shrank like crazy, Kaeon instantly recognizes it as the same one he peeled like a fruit back then, doing his best Sherlock impression. He starts thinking out loud about how it ended up mini-sized while Kim keeps begging to know if it'll live. He reassures her that it's just starving, not dying, and with the mana he gave it, it'll be fine if they leave it alone. But then Kim's brain drags her into a lab trauma flashback. Thinking about her shredded plushie, her voice trembles as she says they can't just leave it when it's barely moving. She hugs it tight, goes full puppy eyes, and asks if she can adopt it. She swears she'll take good care of it. Kaeon grins and warns it might get too big, but she's like, "I'll only give it micro snacks." He gives in to her cute attack and jokes that maybe it can be their guard bird. Right on cue, the fluffball opens its eyes, scans the area like it just respawned, then glares at Kaeon and lets out a grumpy little coo. Kim squeals, excited that it's finally talking, while the bird just blinks around like, "Where the heck am I?" She hugs it again and it flails around, totally overwhelmed, while Kaeon just stares like, "What even is my life right now?" The bird yells to be put down and Kaeon's eyes widen. He actually understood it. A few seconds later, Kim wraps it up in a bandage burrito and says treatment, done, then reveals she's already picked out a name. While it's wriggling like crazy, she explains that since it acts like a pigeon, she's naming it Koo. Kaeon snorts. The angry BB flips out, calling the name ridiculous, but she can't hear it anyway, then casually dumps a whole bucket of water on its head. She freezes when the bird suddenly inflates like a balloon and turns to Kaeon like, why is it chunky now?" He tells her that's probably enough water. So she runs off to find food. Kaeon meanwhile decides it's time to make a proper cabinet because their junk is everywhere. But when he tries to cut wood, it just breaks like soggy cereal. He's confused since he made a table and chair just fine earlier. The fluffball can't take it anymore and straight up roasts him, saying it's obviously soft wood. Kaeon realizes maybe wood types matter and asks what kind's the strongest. The bird blurts out red wood, then freezes in horror, realizing it just got understood again, staring in pure shock. It tries to play it cool and activates its mind-reading power, but nothing happens. Kaeon shrugs and says he doesn't see any red trees around. The bird spirals, realizing its psychic powers just failed. Finally, it drops the act and flat out asks if Kaeon can hear it. He says it's not exactly hearing, it's more like the words just show up in his head. Then flips the question, how the heck can a monster even speak human language? He figures it must be one of those ultra-rare genius monsters. He's never seen one like this up close. Then Kaeon asks if it really is the same bird. The BB nods, saying it came back because he saved it and it wanted to repay him. Kaeon immediately says, "Great, help me out then." The bird blinks, sighs, and agrees to take him to find red wood. Meanwhile, Kim's sprinting like a maniac, dodging fireballs that are straight up exploding behind her, yelling at her attacker to knock it off. She's crying, screaming that it's way too hot. One blast knocks her into the ground hard and panic hits, thinking the lab's finally come for her. Out from the flames steps a long-haired wannabe boss character with dramatic flowy anime hair. Checking his tracker, he mutters she's definitely the target, the mechanical girl. Charging another attack, he says his life on the line too and launches it at her. Kim just freezes. But before the fireball can hit, Kaeon slides in like a superhero and flicks the thing away like lint. Koo immediately says forget the tree, saving the girl is top priority. Kaeon notices how badly Kim's freaking out over the fire and decides to deal with that first. Koo agrees and calls the guy a scumbag for attacking a kid. Rapunzel over there calls Kaeon a caveman and says he's gonna beat him down. Kaeon fires back that this fake anime villain talks too much and boom dude snaps. He screams that Kaeon's ruining his epic moment and throws a giant fireball. Kaeon just lifts one finger, pulls a total Frieza move and blasts it away like it's nothing. Explosion goes off behind Rapunzel and he's left standing there, brain not responding. Then rubble crashes down and buries him. A few seconds later, Kaeon walks over to Kim and asks if she's okay. She wipes her tears and thanks him for putting the fire out. He gives her a little wisdom nugget: next time you're scared, punch the fear. Then, while walking over to the downed attacker, he grabs the guy by the hair and keeps the pep talk going but stops mid-sentence. Because in his hand is not hair, it's a bald wig, and the dude underneath, full-blown chrome dome mode.